Two teammates in the fastest car taking on a rank outsider from another team. Does that sound familiar to you? When Max Verstappen crossed the line to win the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix for the fourth year in a row, beating the all-conquering McLarens, it got me thinking that the picture being painted in this 2025 season is showing very similar signs to two classic F1 title battles in the past. We're 7 rounds down, and if you take a step back and look at how the season has unfolded so far, it's clear as day that there are only 3 drivers that are realistically in with a chance of being crowned world champion in 2025. The rest of the field, despite their best efforts to have their say in this year's world championship, are firmly out of contention and will most likely have to settle for the rest of the year with trying to grab any opportunity that they can. Those drivers are Max, Lando and Oscar. Now, although they've only locked out the podium twice so far this season and only been the top 3 in the qualifying sessions at 3 of the Grand Prix, the standings don't lie. They are dominating ahead of everyone else. They are 25 points ahead of the next nearest driver. Now, to be fair to George Russell, who is 4th in the standings, he's really been the only other driver that has been able to mix it with these 3. And he's also the only other driver to have stood on the podium more than once. But George recorded his worst result of the season so far in Imola when he only managed to finish 7th. So if that is his best result on a bad day, the biggest difference is that for Lando, Max and Oscar, a bad day for them so far this season, you would say, is a 3rd place or even a 4th place. It's still enough to give them a comfortable amount of points that will keep them in the championship fight. And while Russell has also been able to capitalise on any mistakes that those 3 have made, all of the Grand Prix wins so far in the first 7 races have been shared between Oscar, Lando and Max. The story that is being told and the way that the season is shaping is very similar to ones of years gone by, where 3 drivers have battled for the World Championship and it has gone all the way down to the final race. So which seasons am I talking about? Well, let's go back and relive how those title fights developed and ask the question if 2025 could pan out in a very similar vein. The first season goes all the way back to one of Formula One's greatest eras. We are in the mid-80s, and as for most of the decade, there are 2 British teams that are ruling the roost, McLaren and Williams. And 1986 was no exception. The likes of Ferrari, Ligier, Benetton, none of them could get close enough to challenge these 2 teams. And that left us with 3 drivers who ended up battling for that year's World Championship and gave us one of the most enthralling title fights of all time. It was Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell at Williams versus Alain Prost at McLaren. And what happened was a season like there had never been seen before. Triumph, tragedy, inter-team rivalries, on-track battles. In fact, there wasn't really much more that you could have done to have made 1986 more exciting than it turned out to be. Even though Williams had the faster car, Prost, with his usual calculative approach, was able to stay in contention for the title simply through being consistent. He would take any points he could get his hands on, even if that meant finishing behind his 2 main rivals. Whereas Mansell and Piquet, they were immensely quick and so much more exciting to watch. They had this very similar do or die attitude, but that meant that because they were so closely matched, they would take points off each other, and that helped Prost. And like Russell this year, the only other driver that was able to mix it with the main 3 contenders was the Lotus of Ayrton Senna. Especially in qualifying, he actually ended up with 6 more pole positions than anybody, but it was in the races where he fell back. It's because he suffered too many retirements, but he wasn't a contender for the World Championship. Mansell, Prost and Piquet shared the podium together 4 times and would win 13 of the 16 Grand Prix that season. So by the time we got to the title decider in Adelaide, it was Mansell who was leading the championship, having won 5 times across the season, and that left him 6 points ahead of Prost and 7 clear of Piquet. It had all come down to 82 laps to decide who was going to come out on top of the 3-horse race to be crowned champion. And what happened next was the stuff of legend. While Piquet recovered from an early spin and worked his way through the field, and Prost was running second, it was Mansell who was on course to be champion, knowing that if he finished in 3rd place, the title was his. But 20 laps from the end, as he came down the back straight, in a shower of sparks, that's when his left rear tyre exploded. And that's when Murray Walker delivered his iconic line, "Colossally, that's Mansell." So with Mansell now out, Piquet was set to be champion for the 3rd time. But Williams did not want to take any chances after what had happened to Mansell, so they decided to pick Piquet and fit him with fresher tyres. That instead left Prost out in front and now in a championship winning position. Piquet hunted down Prost on his fresh tyres, but it was to no avail. Prost managed to hang on and win by 4 seconds, thus making him world champion for 1986. He may have had the slower car through the season, but his consistency is what had won him his second World Championship. It just went to show that even if you had the best car, you can't take your eyes off the competition for 1 second and leave points on the table. McLaren would have done well to learn from Williams' missed chance. After all, it had given them an unexpected world title. So we now fast forward to 21 years later. We're now in the new millennium, and McLaren are still one of the top dogs in Formula One. It's 2007 and we're now at the beginning of a new era. Michael Schumacher has just retired, but there is plenty of exciting talent on the grid to compensate for Michael's absence. This time around, it's McLaren and Ferrari who are way ahead of the rest, pretty much in a different league in fact. And this season was just as, if not, more dramatic and gripping than 1986 had been. It was the McLarens of Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton versus the Ferrari of Kimi Raikkonen. And this too would develop into a season-long duel that would end up with all three drivers fighting for the World Championship all the way down to the final race. That year, as you may well know, was just as dramatic off the track as it had been on it, mainly because of all the talk that was surrounding the infamous spy scandal that involved Ferrari and McLaren, no less. And that obviously led to McLaren being handed a hefty fine of $100 million and losing all of their Constructors' Championship points. This only added to the intrigue of the battle between both of the teams. And just to show you how dominant both of them were, all of the 17 races, all of the victories were shared between McLaren and Ferrari that year. No other team got close. So to the title battle, and just like Williams 21 years prior, McLaren, on average at least, had the faster package, which was backed up by the fact that their drivers spent most of that year in the top two positions in the standings. Ferrari were not that far off though, and at some of the races they were actually more competitive, and that allowed Raikkonen to work his way into contention, becoming Mr. Consistent from Manicourt onwards, where he'd only finish off the podium once in the remaining races. That would prove crucial to his title chances, as when Alonso had too many off days and would drop points, and Lewis, despite the fact he had a mega start to his rookie season with 9 podiums for the first 9 races, he eventually began to show some inexperience, make mistakes, and he did have a bit of bad luck as well. That allowed Raikkonen to clung on in there and stay in the title fight. The three of them would end up sharing the podium at 4 of the 17 races that season, as well as winning all but 3 of them. So with 1 race to go, the championship looked like this. Hamilton led Alonso by 4 points and Raikkonen by 7 points. Now he'd missed the chance to become F1's first ever rookie champion at the previous round in China, when he managed to get his car beached in the gravel while entering the pit lane. But if he finished 5th in Brazil, Hamilton would win the title. It would be an extremely tense season finale as the permutations just constantly changed during the 71 laps, as Hamilton first of all suffered a freak gearbox glitch that left him right at the back of the field, and Raikkonen only needed to get past his teammate Massa. He was running second for most of the race. All he needed to do was pass him to not only win the race but win the championship. Sure enough, Ferrari did just that. They managed to swap them round during the final pit stop phase, so now Raikkonen was leading Massa, with Alonso running a lonely third, and Hamilton was still recovering through the field from that gearbox glitch that he suffered earlier in the race. Hamilton did manage to work his way back into the points, but by then it was simply too late. Raikkonen won the race and managed to win the championship by just 1 solitary point. Just like 1986, the driver in the inferior car had come through and won the title. For me, McLaren completely mismanaged the rivalry that had developed between Alonso and Hamilton through the year, and it cost them badly. It cost them what should have been their world championship. They simply let it slip through their grasp when they should have instead have wrapped it up quite comfortably. So we now have to ask the question, is 2025 going to follow on from those 2 classic seasons? Is history going to repeat itself? Well, you have to say that so far, the signs are there that it could well do. McLaren have the faster car, but they haven't always been able to execute their weekends, and that's allowed Max to stay in touch, even when he doesn't have a car that is clearly capable of fighting them for victory. All 3 of them have been extremely consistent so far. They've scored points in every race, in fact, but there has been at least 1 race for all of them where they've come out of the weekend feeling that they've left something on the table. There's also no doubt that Max's talent is keeping him in this title fight, because Red Bull are nowhere near as competitive as they were in previous seasons, and they're clearly trailing McLaren. Apart from Imola, the pace has been really poor compared to McLaren. They've been barely able to keep up. That's why Max's win in Japan was all the more impressive. The only thing that Verstappen can do is simply keep pushing McLaren hard, hope that they crack, because McLaren know that they are walking a very dangerous tightrope to try and keep the whole Piastri-Norris relationship harmonious and continue to give them equal treatment. But it feels like sooner or later that bubble is going to burst, and they cannot afford to give Max any invitation to take points off them. As Max showed at Imola on the opening lap when he overtook Piastri with that ballsy overtake at turn 1, that's all he needs. He only needs you to give him an inch and he will get past. But if you instead put him in a position where he's uncomfortable, where he cannot dominate you, that's when he is beatable. But you also have to say that McLaren simply has to take advantage of the fact that they've got the best car in Formula 1 right now, because there is so much racing still to go and so many unknowns for the rest of the season. So just to round things off, I think that if the first 7 races are anything to go by, this has all the hallmarks of replicating 1986 and 2007 with a three-way battle for the championship that goes all the way down to Abu Dhabi. All I'll say to you is savour it, because I think we're in for a titanic scrap. So there you have it. Be sure to let me know in the comment section what you make of the title fight so far. Are you sort of getting a similar vibe to what I am, that this could be very similar to 1986 and 2007 in terms of there being 3 drivers fighting for the World Championship? Also, if you are new around here, don't forget to like the video and please do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.